In this session of Look at the Book, we're focusing on Hebrews 11:24 to 26, and a pretty amazing, crazy lifestyle that faith unleashes. So, Father, I pray that you would grant us to not only understand this, but be ready to be changed by it so that we will walk by faith the way Moses did. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered that the reproach of the Christ was greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. So these three things Moses rejected. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. That would have meant grandson of Pharaoh, right? Privilege, power, fame, you name it. He's got it. And he refused it, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy. So he chose against enjoying the fleeting pleasures of sin. This word pleasures is used one other time in the New Testament and refers to eating and sex. So it's all the kinds of physical delights, enjoyments that he could have wanted, he could have had, and he chose not to have it. He considered that the reproach of the Christ was greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. So he could have had all the money and all the wealth that he wanted on the earth. And he chose against it. Well, what did he positively choose for? By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of the Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. So these two things he chose, he embraced, he chose to be mistreated with the people of God. And he considered reproach, the reproach of the Christ. We'll come back to that in a minute and ask what that means, greater wealth. Now here's the question. How in the world did Moses do something so counterintuitive, so against culture, so against human nature, as to choose so much trouble and suffering and reject so much pleasure and wealth? And the answer is given here: by faith. By faith. So let's take this phrase just a minute and work it out here. Let's take by faith. By faith, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. That refusal right there is not the same as faith. Faith is doing that. By faith, that's happening. By faith, he's choosing to be mistreated rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures. By faith, he's considering the reproach of Christ greater wealth. So this is what faith does. It refuses, it chooses, it considers. But what is faith? Well, if you go to 11:1, right? Just 24 verses earlier. This whole chapter is about faith. It says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. So the assurance of things hoped for. Or if you look at chapter 11, verse 6, it says that without faith we can't please God, for whoever would come to God must believe that he is, and that he is the rewarder. So faith seeks the reward, comes to God as a rewarder. Now, where is that in this passage? It's right here. Looking to the reward. So faith is right there. When you look to the reward that God promises, which is God himself and Christ himself and all that goes with them, and you embrace it and have assurance of it, and you hope in it, and it satisfies your soul, you are having faith. And thus faith conquers. This faith conquers the desire for privilege and power and fame. Faith conquers the craving for these delights that make us sin. And faith conquers this need for money over here, because faith is trusting in a superior reward. The reward of God makes the reward of Pharaoh look pitiful. The reward of God makes the pleasures of Egypt look fleeting and silly. The reward of God down here makes the treasures of Egypt look paltry, and makes reproach for the Christ look like huge wealth, because God promises that when we suffer with him, we will be glorified with him, and that's the reward. Now, one last thing. What is this reproach of Christ here? He calls it the reproach of Christ. And my take on that is that wherever in the world someone suffers to embrace God's people, like Moses did, mistreated with the people of God, wherever someone suffers to embrace God's people and flee from sin, the fleeting pleasures of sin, that person in that act, as he looks to the reward that Christ purchased, that the Messiah will secure, he is regarded as suffering with and for Christ. So this is a great call to us to live by faith. Living by faith means focusing our attention on the promises of God, and that means the reward that God offers to his children, his glory, his excellence, his beauty, his power. Everything that is good in this creation will be preserved, and everything that is evil will be done away with, and we will have him and all of his good gifts. And when you embrace that and it nullifies the pleasures of this world, you are walking by faith.